things I've noticed as a climate advocate is that I don't see as many males in climate advocacy as I see females. At first, I thought this was because in my organization of 110 members, usually there's only like what, 20 males there. And so I thought it's just because like around my vicinity, the people that I work with, generally is like, there's not that many guys there. And so this trend was similar in those other organizations as well. There were still less men there. There were still more females, and I'm not sure why that was. And I'm not saying that men aren't really contributing to climate change or contributing to solving climate change as females are, or are not as interested in it, but rather that my observation says that there's not that many people or not many men that are involved in it as there should be. And this caught my attention and the attention of a few of my fellow climate advocates. And so I looked this up, I did a bit of research, and I found that in a study by Pew Research Center in, Yale in 2018, found that 42% of men compared to women were more concerned about climate change affecting their personal lives. And in the same study, they found that males were more, were more informed about climate change and had less misconceptions of it. And so there's like this bit of a disconnection, like why is it that men were more informed and knew more about climate change yet weren't as concerned? And it's backed up by another study by Pew Research Center, which said that in 2015, which said that 48% of men in the US were concerned about climate change compared to 69% of women concerned about climate change affecting them personally. And the trend is very similar in other countries as well. And so with this in mind, it sort of moved from, my own observation, my own anecdotal observation, and more like a real thing that was happening in the world. And this got me interested. Like, I wanted to know why. Why is it that not many people men aren't that concerned about climate change? They were participating, not as much as females, but they were participating, yet they weren't as concerned about it affecting them personally. So I went around asking my friends, as well as conducting a few surveys, and two of the more common answers that I've received from men is either it's because I'm going to die anyways, or because climate change just feels like feminine. Like being climate advocate is just feminine. And so, and now I know that I didn't exactly do like a thorough investigation, and it was mostly just a few surveys here and there, and asking some of my friends here and there. But I found this sentiment to be common in a lot of places as well, online and in discussions about climate change. So, to me, the phrase, "I'm going to die anyways," can be interpreted in two ways. It's either I'm going to die because of climate change and there's nothing I can do about it, or I'm going to die before climate change is going to affect me. And these two attitudes signify or represent two prevalent attitudes that people have regarding climate change. For a lot of people, climate change is a heavy issue. It's like being at the base of a mountain and like seeing an avalanche barreling its way down towards you. It's a big threat, right? And two of the many ways, other than running, that humans have in terms of reaction towards such a threat is despair or denial. Despair being, I'm going to die from it, there's nothing I can do about it, or denial, it won't reach me. It's so far up there, and it won't reach me and it won't kill me, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, obviously in the real world, people will just run from an avalanche, right? It's big, scary, it's tangible, you can see it, it's a big threat to your life, of course you would run. But for a complicated issue like climate change, you can't really run from that, can you? And so people revert to those two other ways of reacting towards a threat, which is denial, or despair. In addition to this psychological blocking of action, men are less concerned about their own mortality. We can see this because men are statistically more likely to die younger than women are. A research by PMC states that the men in all cultures have a higher mortality rate between the ages of 15 and 44 than women do. And men know this. Men typically take more dangerous jobs. Men usually take higher risks. And men are apparently less likely to avoid medical care in an effort to act tough, I guess. So we are simply less likely, or simply less concerned and prioritize our own mortality less than women do. And so it is without surprise that our answer towards a threat on our lives or on our mortality is a recognition of our mortality. In addition, climate change is a very complicated issue. It's hard to wrap your head around all these different causes and effects and all these different problems in environmental. It's easy to get lost. So, and there are many like different connected, how do you say, like causes and effects that interrelate with each other in different ways. Trust me, every time I talk with this or that climate activist, they introduce me to a whole new world of problems that I just get lost in, like, oh my God, what, I thought I already knew everything, you know? There's another mental barrier that men have to overcome, and it's made even more difficult because of the differences in their psychological process of thought. There's a book titled, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. It's a weird book title, but the book is about sort of like a description on how, or like it attempts to open a discussion about the differences in the psychological thought process between men and women. And in my interpretation of it, it describes men as waffles, akin to waffles, compartmentalized. We have separate boxes for separate skills and information, like in a waffle. And we'll compare this to women who are described as spaghetti. They are able to relate different information together and string them together just like spaghetti. And this compartmentalized thought process and separated thought process is what makes it more difficult for men to take action on climate change, because we're not sure what skills we're going to use, you know, like what box are we going to use? There's this and that problem, there's this and that issue, like what am I going to use? What am I doing? You know, like is being able to fix a machine, that box, able to fix climate change? No, right? There's no one solution to fixing climate change. And as well as that, we are also less likely to relate the effects of climate change to our own personal lives. And I interviewed 10 climate activists. And a trend I saw was that the men that I interviewed were more inclined to focus on specific aspects of climate change. And they related to the things that happen in their own personal lives. So things like a specific niche in sustainable agriculture, or air pollution in a specific region. Compare this to the women that I interviewed who looked at the specific aspects, yet still recognized and pushed towards the general progression of solving climate change. Now, for the second answer that I got from guys, which is climate advocacy feels feminine, I kind of agree with this statement. I feel like for me and for a lot of people, the first thing I think about when given the prompt of stereotypical climate advocate, it would be a young girl, or a young woman. And this, as well as the lifestyle changes that climate advocates are associated with, like eating less meat or driving less or smaller cars, those are considered unmanly, I guess. However, I believe that the biggest obstacle that men have I believe the biggest obstacle that men have towards overcoming, being able to act towards climate change is the toxic masculinity. And when I talk about toxic masculinity, I don't say that masculinity is toxic in itself, rather about the toxic traits that are regarded as masculine. Traits like using or threatening violence in calm situations, or being unfeeling, or acting tough all the time, or regarding feminine traits as a sign of weakness in men. These are the social pressures that men have that make them unfeeling, masculine, and having to act tough all the time. I feel that a lot of the men here in the audience also feel this kind of pressure sometimes, right? And as a male climate advocate, I get this pressure as well. Sometimes I'd be told like, oh, I won't be able to build muscle that I need to protect myself if I don't eat enough meat. Or you should drive bigger cars. You look so girly in that tiny car of yours. Something like that, right? And the thing is, none of these are actually like necessary for climate advocacy. No, I don't need to not eat. I don't need to get rid of meat from my diet to be a climate advocate. I don't need to stop using cars to be a climate advocate. And these views only further discourage men and reinforce the idea that climate advocacy is feminine. We should aim to give climate advocacy or climate activism a more neutral image. One of the ways that we can do this is by bringing more activities and communities that are associated with men into climate activism. Sports like basketball can be integrated into climate change, or into the discussion of climate change, as they don't fundamentally contribute towards trash pollution or global warming. Labeling sports as eco-friendly will associate these sports and activities that men are usually a part of, and bring it towards the forefront of a lot of men today. So while we're watching sports, we can also talk about vegan coffee or vegan plastic. That'd be cool. You can play basketball with like a vegan basketball. That'd be pretty lit. Plant-based MMA fighter Nate Diaz and vegan former strongman Patrick Baboumian dispel the myth that climate advocates advocating for a pro-environmental lifestyle is feminine, as that's the last thing that you would think when you see Patrick Baboumian or Nate Diaz. Integrating these pro-environment traits into climate activism, an example of this would be like having a basketball team that basketball team of climate activists who try to reduce trash pollution that is produced in basketball games. Focusing on the specific aspects of climate change also relates back to the difference in psychological thought process that men have, and allows it to be more inviting to men, and allows them to be more effective in their work towards solving climate change. But why should we do these things? Why should we integrate more men into climate change? Why should we bring more men into climate change? That's because climate change is a threat to everyone. It's not just to men or just to women. It affects us all. And everyone should contribute more. I simply want to address the lack of men that there are in climate advocacy. And so, to my fellow men out there who aren't that interested in climate change, I just want to say that there's nothing more masculine or gives you more purpose than fighting for the world that we live in and protecting the world we live in. I invite you guys to fight for climate change and solve everything, yeah? All right. Thank you.